a people resources management background, and focusing really on how we're using workforce to help the NHS to meet its requirements in terms of looking after the patients that it needs to take care of. 2 years ago, we had a coming together with an organisation called RLDatix, RLDatix. So what we've tried to do with RLDatix is to weave governance, risk, compliance with what we're doing with people. And I think in terms of what we're doing with people, we've spoken about what we're doing in terms of staff scheduling for all staff groups. And I think probably most of you are customers. And I think, look, today on the 75th anniversary of the NHS, we just like to say thank you for your input into the NHS and the work that you do, because I think that most of you are customers of ours. So I think from that perspective, we want to say thank you. But look, it's not easy being an HR in the NHS these days. So we really appreciate the work you do. So look, coming from where we are, the right people, coming to operations, and then thinking today around how HRK can manage the risk that you have around the activities that you support against your internal processes and policies. Some things just to say around HRK, it's compliant. We make it compliant with your policies, procedures, and how you actually support your organisation from an HR perspective. Things are fully visible. We'll show you that in the demo. It's initial. We'll talk about some of those features. And I think most importantly, perhaps helping to make you more efficient. When I worked in the NHS, which was quite some time ago now, most things were done with Excel files and most things were done with Word, and we didn't have much structure around how to manage HR actions. And look, this is one of the highest areas of risk for an organisation. I think reflecting on my time in the NHS, I think when things went external, most of the reasons for that is that as an organisation, we weren't compliant with our own policies. We weren't keeping up to date and tracking what we should have been doing at the right time. And I think that's where we can help. But just some things to say around integration. We'll talk about this in brief, but importantly, you have ESR, you have your HR case system. So that's coming together, making sure that we can relate the individuals in the organisation to what we're doing in terms of managing any activities around them from an HR case perspective. That consistency between systems is important, but also they're making sure that we've got that correlation at all points in time around the information we're holding in HR case and the information that perhaps you have in other systems. Thanks, Harriet. So look, just to sort of think about some reflections on what our customers tell us about HR case. Going back to my time in the NHS, we're making your life easier as HR practitioners. We're saving time because rather than having to manage cases and to make sure you're complying with the steps of a case, HR case provides that prompting for you. So it's a lot easier to manage cases, better reporting, quicker reporting. We found that it's 70% quicker to retrieve HR case information rather than going to that HR filing cabinet or going to your shared drive or going to your local drive. Everything together in one place. And again, we're sort of reflecting on the ROI. Of course, there's a cost to systems, but what we're seeing is that people are saying that they're getting twice as much return on investment financially from lots of aspects of the system. A case here, looking at long-term sickness absence, always really complex to manage sickness, especially in the NHS. But we're seeing HR case support those processes. And of course, if we're reducing sickness absence, there's less reliance on banks, there's less reliance on agency, and we're keeping individuals in work, which is what we're obviously here to do. Faster case resolution, we're seeing that sort of speed up because, again, we've been prompted as HR practitioners to take the steps we need to take at the time we need to take steps. Coming back to cost avoidance, as I said, look, making sure that we're doing things properly against the policies and the procedures that we have. So we're not risking that external exposure to employment tribunals. And I think, again, we've seen some statistics that says 85%, 90% of HR cases that go external are because organisations aren't necessarily following their own policies and procedures. So it's just making sure that that's working for organisations and it's working for individuals, your employees and your workers that are going through process. 40% reduction in legal spend for early intervention, again, sort of tying into the point that we've talked about above. If we're doing things in a more ready fashion, it just helps us to avert those cases that pass across the legal. And again, if we're doing things on time and we've got people that are suspended away from work, we can get them back to work quicker. If obviously that's the outcome, which means that we're paying staff less for time that they spend on suspension. Reducing risk, increasing compliance with your policies. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Especially from an HR perspective, that we are, to a large extent, the policemen of the organisation. We support line managers in doing that, but inevitably that workload falls on your shoulders. So making sure that we are acting to become increasingly compliant with our own policies and procedures. Looking at visibility on high-risk cases, information can be shared more readily in more standard processes. Strong positions if things do go external. We've spoken about that, which again is really important. And again, looking at cause and effect. If we're getting profiles of activities in terms of cases and case outcomes, well, how do they relate to the positions that we started with? And again, improving safeguarding, monitoring notifications. This is, I think, what we've done as a company for a long time is support frontline NHS workers in absolutely the same way that you do as HR practitioners, making sure that we're working to support you so you can support those frontline staff and make sure they're operating as safely as they possibly can. And again, I think in the NHS, it's about that reputation, isn't it? Making sure that you are an employer of choice, that you're using all the things you can to provide that attraction to individuals. It's a really competitive market by way of attraction recruitment. And of course, then lastly, just looking at the increased intelligence around HR strategy and how we can actually work into that. So look, this is feedback from our customers, and I think it's helping you as HR practitioners to do the difficult jobs that you do. I'm working through some of the really sensitive cases that you have to work through. What we're doing and what we're talking about here in terms of HR case management is taking away some of that admin burden so you can use your professional experience and skills to add value where you need to add value. So that's it from me. We're going to hand over now to Tanisha. Tanisha will actually take us through HR case. But if there's any questions, then please pop them into the chat and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Darren. I'll go ahead and take the screen. So just to set the agenda in terms of what I'll show today. So I'll go ahead and give a whistle-stop tour of a Assure HR case. By all means, if anybody wants to arrange a full demonstration or see the system in more depth, some more details will come out about that at the end of the call. For the time being, I'll just go ahead and highlight some of those key benefits which really help you to manage your caseload. So I'm just going to move this bar. Okie dokie. So to start the demonstration, what we're looking at here, can everybody see my screen okay, by the way? Yeah? Okie dokie. So what we're looking at here is my dashboard. This is ultimately what I would see as a case handler when I log into my system. I'm currently logged in as a super user, so I do have permission to see and report across department and across case type. However, you can tailor the permissions that are within the system as well. So what I have on this page is ultimately everything that I need at a snapshot to be able to manage my cases. So I'll just quickly whiz you through the different reports on this screen, starting with our summary widget here. And I'm looking at a summary of my open cases, which is filtered out for me by case type. Now, these case types are example case types. Your case types might look somewhat similar or they might look completely different. These are all tailorable and you can manage as many case types as you need to within the system. I'd be able to click into my cases here and go and manage my 4 disciplinaries directly from my dashboard also. And additionally, I would be able to see a summary of my closed cases and also the outcomes of those cases by percentage value as well. I have another report here which shows me any cases that I have in monitoring, and I'll explain that in a bit more depth shortly, but it just allows me to get an overview, a long-term view of my workload as opposed to what's coming up in the immediate to near future. To the right of my screen, I can keep up to date with any recent updates or communications that have come in on any cases that I'm handling. So this might be that something has been changed by another colleague that is also working on this case, or it could be an incoming email. Nevertheless, rather than having to manually go through and scrutinize those cases to understand what updates or changes have happened in my absence, I'd be able to see those directly from my dashboard. And again, anywhere that I have this purple text, as a rule of thumb, is a hyperlink, and I'd be able to click into those cases. Where I'd probably want to spend my most of my time is looking at what I need to do. And at the moment, I'm looking at what I need to do this week, but I do have the option to drill down and look at what I need to do for today, or I can expand out and look at what I need to do in the next couple of weeks, perhaps if I wanted to give a handover. And at a snapshot, I have everything that I need in order to manage my cases or to know where I'm at with the cases that I'm managing. So I can see exactly what cases I'm working on, the employees that are involved in those cases, what step I'm currently in that particular case, and when the next step, what the next step is and when that is due. If I don't go ahead and complete this step, so I will already be receiving reminder emails about this that I've got a step coming up in my case, and you would determine the frequency of those reminder emails. For anything that does go overdue, I'd be able to see the same information in my overdue tab. As Darren mentioned, there are certain tools and features which are built in within the system to help assist with the management of your suspensions. So I'd be able to keep an eye on any colleagues that I do have on suspension directly from my dashboard. I don't need to, scrutinize those cases manually or remember to check in on review dates for suspensions. What I also have on my dashboard is a tasks list. So this allows me to keep any tasks that are important to the case safe together with the case in a central secure repository. I can make sure that I'm getting reminder emails about these tasks. And it also means that any of my colleagues that are also working on this particular case alongside me can also complete actions and tasks against the case. So a really handy feature that's helps to replace post-it notes on your desk, which might contain sensitive information, and also just make sure that everybody is included and aware of what tasks have been completed against a case. The data set that I'm looking at on my screen is relevant to cases that I'm currently handling. So all of the, if we have any questions, could we just pop those in the chat and we'll come back to questions at the end, if that's okay. So all of the data that I'm currently seeing on my screen is relevant to the cases that I'm currently handling. And a case handler in Assure HR case terms is somebody that is responsible for going through those steps and stages of the case. Now, you might also within your organization have case reviewers. So a case reviewer would be somebody that perhaps needs access to the case, might need to receive those reminder emails, but is not necessarily that person that will be going through those steps and stages hands-on. Now, it might be that I am assigned both roles within the organization. So I handle disciplinaries, but I review performance cases, for example. So rather than having to log out of the system as a handler and log back in as a reviewer, I can use my dashboard and toggle this data set for any cases that I'm responsible for reviewing. Additionally, as a line manager, I'd be able to go into any of my team's view as well. So if I'm managing a HR team or an ER team, I'd be able to go into the view of my team's dashboard. So I can come in and see what cases Ellie is working on, how many cases she has overdue, and perhaps maybe redistribute some cases amongst the team. So I'll move away from the dashboard and we'll go ahead and we'll look at a case that I already have open and we'll work through some of those steps and stages. So I'll just click into this disciplinary as an example. Now, when I click into this disciplinary and we come in to look at our case progress, you can see that in this particular disciplinary, I've said that I have 4 stages. So I have my informal, formal, mediation, and disciplinary hearing stage. And then I have various steps that fall within those stages. Each of my steps will have an associated timeline, and that will tally up in total to what I've said my disciplinaries should take in line with my SLAs. Now, I might need to add an additional step into this particular disciplinary. So I might say to the mediation stage, I need to add in a witness investigation, which I expect to take 10 days. So it just allows me to make changes to this particular case without disrupting all of my other cases within the system. The system recognizes that not all cases are the same, and there may be times when you need to build in that additional step. Subsequently, I could also be able to come in here and I can go ahead and close the case directly from here. I can go back a step if I need to repeat a particular step in the case. I can also skip stages and steps. So if it's just not relevant for me to complete this particular stage or step, if I've previously completed it, then I can skip that. I mentioned on the dashboard about cases and monitoring. So I can set this case in monitoring, which ultimately is like applying a pause to the case. So this says, well, I'm unable to move forward with this particular step, perhaps because of some performance monitoring. So I just need, you know, an extra month or an extra 2 months to complete this particular step. And similarly, I can extend the step out. So that says, actually, I am working on this particular step right now. I just need a bit more time to complete it because I'm waiting for some information from the manager, and the manager is currently on annual leave. So I need an extra week to complete that. So ultimately, you've got full control over the way that you manage your cases within a Sure HR case. But you'll notice that anytime that I have deviated away from my standard process, so anytime that I've done anything outside of just proceeding to the next step of the case, it's asked me to record a reason as to why I've done that. And I just really wanted to recap on that compliance element that Darren spoke about in his slides. That one of the elements of compliance that is built in within the system. So anytime you deviate away from what's considered a standard or a fair process, you're going to be asked to capture evidence as to why. So in the event, you know, further along down the line that you were invited to tribunal, you've got those reasons recorded right throughout. So I'll go ahead and save that, and you'll see that that's now pushed us further down into our case, and I can see that I've also built in that witness investigation into the case. Now, as well as the compliance elements, we've had a look at some of the compliance elements and some of the visibility elements of the system, having a look at some of the elements that we've built in to help you work in a more efficient way. Some of those would be around being able to drag and drop those documents into a secure central repository. So I can come in and I can add notes to my case, and that could be anything from, you know, general case updates right through to room booking information. For example, I might just on this occasion say that this was the meeting. I can drag any files that were relevant to the meeting. So that could be the recording from the meeting, or it could be any other documents that was discussed. But just to give you an idea of what kind of documents you could drop here, this could be anything from statement of fitness to work to CCTV files. So there's lots of different file types that you could have and be able to store against your cases. What's particularly handy about a Sure HR case is that it allows you to record any admin time and external costs that have gone into this endeavour. So I might say the meeting took an hour and a half, and the cost of the meeting room and tea and biscuits and the solicitor came to £250. So that just allows me to collate that data and subsequently go back and run reports and start to understand what our cases are costing us per case type, what our cases are costing us per case department, etc. And that document has just stored itself for me in our notes and correspondence library. I can see the admin time and external cost there. I'd be able to go ahead and email that directly out of the system, or I can download it if need be. Another way that I can get documents easily into the system is via our Outlook plugin. So we do have an Outlook plugin. You'll notice that it does say send to ER tracker. So as Darren mentioned, we have been acquired by RLDatix, and you know, in order to come together, and we've changed the name of the product, but it is still the same product, same functionality. And Julie will explain more in her slides in the benefits of, you know, the different organizations coming together. Nevertheless, it's not sort of, if you have heard of ER Tracker before, it is the same product. So all I'd need to do is come in and search for my employee and just add this email to the case. And I can include all of the attachments on there. And when I go back to a Sure HR case and refresh my screen, I should, oh, sorry, I searched the wrong employee. This is Kirst. So I'll be able to see that email there for me. So I'll just send this to Kirsty, send it to Brit. So I can see my email there. Additionally, in the efficiency pillar, we've also built in letter templates. So when I come into my letter templates, I'm only going to see templates that are relevant to the case type that I'm in. If I'm in a disciplinary, I'm not going to see letter templates that are relevant to sickness cases, for example. I can select the relevant stationery. So if you have slightly different departments with different email addresses, or if you have different sites, you can choose the stationery that's relevant, and you'd be able to select as many employees that are on that are included in this particular case. And what I can allow the system to do is use those mail merge fields and just generate a letter for me without having to go ahead and manually find all of those details. And there I have a letter that's ready to be emailed out of the system, or additionally, I could download and send it out, of course. And that works in the same way for the letter templates. Lastly, if I needed to give any of this as evidence for a tribunal, or if I needed to give any of these documents, give somebody access to these documents without giving them access to the system, I can simply download all notes, and that's going to open a handy zip file for me containing all of that CCTV evidence, all of those notes and letters and documents, etc. Moving away from the case, I'll just very quickly run through the reporting suite. So a Sure HR case comes with about 35 pre-built reports, really high-level reports that allow you to get some really valuable insights around the data that you're collating in the system. There is also an inbuilt report builder. So if you want to get a bit more granular on that data, you'd be able to come in and build your own reports and be able to drag and drop those relevant fields that you're interested in seeing. So I might say that I want to see the case reference, the date that it was created, and I can come in and I can just search for fields that I'm interested in having on my particular report. So I might want to see the employee's full name, the department, perhaps maybe some information around the handler. I can simply just come in and drag and drop those fields onto my report, and you'll see that that starts to build out a report for me. I can also manipulate the report from within the system. I don't need to export that out to an Excel, so I can, hit that to a sum or account, for example. I can rename some columns and say that actually this is the employee, just making it abundantly clear who's the employee and who's the handler, and just move some things around if need be. Now, you might spend a bit of time, you might spend 15 to 30 minutes creating a report, but once I've created that report, I'd be able to save that report, give it a name, and anytime I need to access that report, that will be there for me in the system. So if that's something that I need to see on a regular frequency, then I'd be able to go ahead and go into the system and access that report with that up-to-date populated data, as opposed to having to create it every single time. And we have now built in the ability to schedule that report out. So if this is something that I need to see every week, I can make sure that that is being sent to my inbox every Monday morning whilst I'm still on my way to the office, for example. I can determine whether I want that to be an Excel file or a CSV file. And I can also determine if I want that to be sent to myself or to a team of people as well. So that's everything I'm going to show for today. As I mentioned, if anybody wants to have a full demonstration or would like to arrange to see more of the system, please stay on until the end of the call and you'll get some more information around that. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So now we're going to hand over to Marion. Really appreciate the questions coming in the chat. We will pick those up in our Q&A session. So please keep them coming. And with that, we'll hand over to Marion. Thanks.
Hi everybody, I'm Marion Ball. I'm a project manager from Doncaster and Basildon Teaching Hospital. We implemented ERKs. If I do refer to it as ER Tracker, it's because that's how we've always known it, so it has just recently changed name. So we implemented this system last year, and the reason we implemented this system was prior to taking on the new system, we had no formal system or structure in place. It was an Excel documentation that we kept up to date. So it was lack of consistency, some managers missed steps, the timescales were really long and it was very hard to audit. So they were the main reasons why we needed to look at a viable system. Mostly to make sure that everybody within the trust was fairly on one case to the next case. So on implementation, the project team well, there was three of us. There was myself as project manager. We had a senior people business partner and employees relations manager. So work very closely, and I cannot really say how much they committed to this project. So without them being fully committed, it wouldn't have worked. They were very thorough at making sure that everything was done to the letter, all the steps and processes were met. So the timescales, it did take us 6 months to implement this system. The reason for this is at the same time, we're also updating policy. So we wanted to make sure that as we implemented the system, it was up to date with the new policies as well. So again, each step and each stage was aligned to policy. And we also had a few months delay due to the VCOD work that was going on behind the scenes that took my team away from the project. So we had to ramp that back up. We had, when we went live with the system on the 25th of April, we invited a lot of managers to training sessions on how to access the system and also how they need to work through each case type. So in the trust, we have a number of divisions and directorates, and we have members of the business partners that have their work areas divided up. So we actually reached out to the wider people business team to provide training and guidance for the line managers within their areas. Next slide, please. So why I do love this system. I think it's so easy to use and so easy to implement. It is really good. I love it. So it's easy to customize. So each step and stage within your policy you can tailor. So you can tailor that to local requirement, which is brilliant. You can again customize the user defined fields, and I've put there that I'm going to explain what user defined field is. A lot of people may not know, but a user defined field is the type of information that you want to put there. So it could be a date, name, case note, anything that you want to capture, you can add in and you can capture that information. It is very tailorable. So a lot of this product is tailored at HR case management, but we actually worked with the provider to tailor a sick absence case type. So we designed and developed based on our own centralised model for sick absence at DBTH around the absence recording and reporting. So it's brilliant for capturing the data, and from that means we have live data that we're able to put into roster and ESR multiple times throughout the day. Again, what's really good, the reporting, I know it was touched on previously, you can make bespoke reports, you can have direct email scheduling, you could have a generic email. So a lot of our teams within the trust have generic, whether it be HR or people's systems, generic email addresses. So we can set up tailored reports that go to the inboxes on a timely manner, so the information's there when people need it. The timescales are all amendable. You could have it come at 6 o'clock in the morning, ready for you to start work. Your reports there in your inbox. You can pull out reports on the divisional area that you're looking at. You can pull it out on protected characteristics if you're looking deeper into certain areas. It is a really good system. So the improvements that we felt that this system has put in place for Doncaster and Basildon Teaching Hospital is reducing the process time in managing case types. So on the next slide, I will say about next steps that we do at the moment. So we don't have any specific data at the moment, but we are doing a 12-month review. So hoping to get some accurate stats out within the next few months. We've had great feedback from members of not just the HRBP team, so the people business team who sit with it on a day-to-day basis, but also from managers within the ward areas, because it is easy and it's adaptable and all the information's in one place. So if you're looking for a certain person, all the information's there, all the letters, it is auditable, and it's easy to find everything. All the letters, version controlled as well, because they are uploaded. So it's not a thing of, you might have sent a letter out 12 months ago, you've got a new letter, but the managers in the department are still using an older version. The version that's on the tracker are all updated. You can remove them and you can update them that way. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm whizzing through this really quickly, I do apologise. So what's next for us at DBTH? So we've had the system in place for just over 12 months now. So we, like I said previously, we do have it for case management as well as absence recording. So we're currently looking at undertaking a 12-month review. So that'll be a questionnaire to managers and the people business partners. So it'll be looking at quantitative and qualitative data. We're also hoping to extract some data and get some real statistics on how well it's improved, rather than just thinking, oh yeah, we definitely have seen the reduction in here. We need some chunky bits of data there. But also, and I think this is what I love more, is the absence reporting and recording side of it. So like I touched on previously, at Doncaster, we have a centralised model. So any member of staff who is off absent will ring in, and that will be captured and put onto one system. So we're then able to report on that system and it's live. So we are looking now at exploring the options of using HR case to support colleagues during their absence. So to speed up referral process, for example, if you've got staff that have come in that have rung in because they're absent, but then they've extended it due to maybe they've got MSK issues, it's whether we can then put a process in place to use the case handler, which is one of the drop downs on your case information, as being the physio service in our Occupational Health department, or whether it's again, we just report to them once a week and they can get a bit of a head start on mopping up that service rather than them having to wait to come back to work for the referral. We also do currently run reports, and we do get better phone conversations with staff. So I wanted to investigate the options of doing more work with mental health. And also we are looking at the possibility of adding a second reason code for sick absence for the menopause to again support staff in that area. Because really we do need to look after our staff. And that's it. That's for me. Thank you.
Marion, thank you so much. It's really, really interesting to hear a real life experience back from the system that we provide. So I appreciate the candid feedback. Everyone, we're going to hand over now to Julie Waters. Julie is one of the senior members of our R&D team with responsibility for HR case. We'll talk about where we are now and what's coming next. Julie, thanks.
Yeah, hello everybody. So just a little recap from me on where we are now and where we're taking the HR case product. So currently in development, we're working on those reports that Tanisha showed you. So in our custom reports, we're building additional functionality into there. So adding things like aggregate functions so that you can look at some and minimum and maximum sort of functions. But we'll also be adding the ability to add in calculated columns. So if you want to build a custom report and concatenate information from different fields together, or manipulate date formats and things like that. So adding that functionality into the reporting suite. We're also looking at being able to schedule reports where you currently have what we call a runtime filter. So this will be a filter that you apply each time you run the report, but being able to schedule those and specify the filter for that report for the schedule, that is coming soon as well. We're currently also working on the ability to customize the working days. So currently in the system, the due dates are all calculated on the basis that the working days are Monday to Friday, and they exclude weekends and things like public holidays. But recognizing that, you know, particularly NHS, you work 7 days a week, the ability to customize those working days and then have the due dates work on those accordingly. So that's what we're currently working on. In the coming year, we'll be working on sort of implementing single sign-on and multi-factor authentication for the login and authentication process. We've had a lot of inquiries about this around organisations that are required to implement or achieve their Cyber Essentials Plus certification. And in order to do that, all the applications that they use need to have multi-factor authentication. So we'll be looking at that as an alternative to logging in with the company ID, username and password. And then based on what Marion has been speaking about the absences that are used in HR case, we've been looking into the possibility of tracking that absence, passing that absence information across to the Allocate Optima Health roster system. So that ensures that the sort of absence is synchronized across the two systems. So those are our sort of plans for the coming year. Moving into later year to fiscal year 25, we want to start looking at modernising the user interface. So looking at things like dashboards to give a more modern look and feel, charts to show information. So looking at how we can make the user interface really nice and intuitive, but more modern looking and give you that chart information. We still want the system to be easy to use and intuitive for the users of the system, but to give a more graphical representation of the information that's presented on the screen there. And then moving on into fiscal year 26, looking at further integrations with our other RLDatix products. We currently have policy stats, which we could integrate with, and we're looking at also maybe integrating with the RL risk products as well. Further integrations with ESR are a possibility as well. So currently we can take the information from ESR, but having a dedicated link where we could download the sort of person information and employee assignment details. So those are our plans for this year and what we're doing now this year and our coming years, giving you a little insight into the roadmap there. That's all I wanted to touch on today, but hope that's given you a good insight.
Thank you, Julie. That's really helpful. So I think now we've got some time to look at some of the questions that we've recorded in chat. If anybody wants to ask their question again, then by all means, we'll pick that up and answer the questions that you've got. Who'd like to go first?
I can cover the first one, Darren, on the reminder emails to the line managers. So currently you can extend the reminder emails to the line managers. That's quite easy to set up. So when you create the case, there is an option in the user details. It's just a tick box to send the reminders to the line managers. So that's quite easy to set up when you create the case in the system. And there is an option in the case details, send reminders to case handlers in the reminder section there on the cases. So that should be nice and easy for you to set up already in the system there.
Great, thanks, Julie. Rachel, does that answer your question in terms of the distribution of responsibility for HR processes across your organisation?
I think partly, what we're on a bit of a journey on at Mid Yorkshire is trying to move towards managers really owning their cases. And so I think what I was trying to establish is, could they be the ones that are doing the letters, putting things into that system, or is this very much HR based and we can send messages out to the managers, but we wouldn't expect them to be logging in and viewing their caseload and managing their own caseload on there?
At DBTH, sorry, I hope nobody else wanted to answer that question. We want the managers to take more ownership, so we do encourage them. So we are there to support. Obviously, not obviously, maybe we do have certain areas that have more frequent flyers, I suppose. So we'll be used to doing certain certain parts of the process, so they'll pick that up quicker and will need less and less one-to-one guidance, but we are there to carry on supporting managers throughout it. So we are trying to give them the ownership. Does that answer?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Next question from Megan. Can we report on WRES information? Judy, is that one for you?
Sorry, did you pass that across to me?
Yes, Judy, thanks to you.
So what do we want to report on?
Megan, do you want to ask your question and just give some context?
I think I might be able to answer that question. I just did a quick Google search. I think it's correct me if it's that workforce race equality. Is that?
Yeah, sorry, and there's also the disability one as well. Sorry.
That's fine. So in terms of those user-defined fields that were mentioned, so it's worth mentioning as well that the user-defined fields can be captured not only against your cases, but against your employees as well. So if there is any of that, protected characteristics or demographical information that you are holding against your employees, the system can, by all means, you can import that into the system and subsequently run reports on that as well.
Thanks, Tanisha. And Megan, you've got some more questions. Do you want to ask those again? And then we'll ask the team to field your questions.
Sorry, yeah, the other one was in relation to the interface into ESR. You mentioned that some information does interface between the two systems. Does the ER case information interface into the ER URP that's set up on ESR?
It currently doesn't know. There is an interface from ESR out of ESR to bring sort of employee information, and that's the one that we probably want to try and implement in the future. Currently, you can set up your employees, but we want to make a sort of an integrated download through this sort of outbound information from ESR into HR case. Passing information the other way, that there isn't currently an interface that will allow us to do that. So that's more of a manual process for now.
Megan, just to add some colour to that. So the interfaces that we can use between our systems and ESR are actually controlled by the ESR central team. So they make interfaces available for us to use. So at present, we've only got one interface or two interfaces that actually take information back into ESR. One's for time and attendance for payroll and the other is absent. So yeah, we are to some extent limited by what we're provided with by way of integration. I think Megan, the other point to make is some of the feedback that we've had is that organizations might not want to send some really sensitive information back to ESR, where perhaps we have less control over reporting capabilities across teams. So that's why I think having it in the system is really quite secure from our perspective, and I think most organizations like that approach. Next question from Zoe.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much. This session's really helpful despite being a user of the system for some time and now managing the system. So thank you so much for organising it. Really appreciate it. A really practical question from us in that we'd really like to find a way of using the system to help us support managers in making really well-informed decision where perhaps precedent in other decisions that have been made across the trusts for disciplinary panels have taken place. So I just wondered whether our colleagues from the trust up in Doncaster could help me with that.
Yeah, as I'm aware, I don't think we do that. I don't think we look at other decisions made on similar outcomes to feed into other cases. I think we review on a one-to-one, but I can also always find out from the actual people that do the work, because I just implemented it and then I walked away. So there are people still there that do the doing, so to speak. So I can find out an email if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Shall I pop my email address in the message? Yeah,
that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
Okay, next question we have from Jean-Charles. back to Doncaster and Russet Law. John Charles.
Hi, thanks, Darren. Thanks for the team. We've also been using the system for the past, actually since the pandemic. But as you would have expected, we seem to be using it very differently from Marianne's team. And my question, I guess, comes from possibly this overprotective kind of instinct of holding information and thinking about leaving it to managers. Only our team has access to the employee relations team, at UCLH, has access to the ER tracker, as we call it. And I understand from your presentation, Marianne, that all managers are potentially case handlers. And I just wonder whether, maybe there were none actually, but whether there were any challenges in terms of data protection or training in terms of what may have been a transition, or maybe that was not a transition, because now I'm thinking maybe that was already happening at Doncaster. Maybe spreadsheets were used by managers instead of HR team to manage cases. So that's where I'm coming from. At the moment, managers don't have access to the system. There may be some processes led by managers, and those processes will be tracked on the ER tracker, but the tracking in terms of input will be done by members of my team, not by the managers directly. Did that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. The thing is there's nothing on the ER tracker that managers would be aware of via other management self-service on ESR or any other. There's nothing there apart from the information that they need to manage the staff. And there's also permission levels. So if you are concerned about things, we do have I think off the top of my head, it might have been maybe 5 or 6 different type of users in the ER tracker. So for example, you've got super users, you've got managers, and you've got the HRBP reps, and then different levels within them as well. So they're allowed different level of permission. And based on that, it depends on what they can see, view, or edit. And then, so from what I recall, it was a certain level of manager and above. Yes, I think it was a certain level of management above, but then we also do one-to-one training. So we do a lot of training about this, but like I said previously, it's nothing on the tracker is anything different than a manager or their manager would be allowed access to. So it'd only be their manager if it's somebody's case, an employee's case, it'll be their manager viewing it. It wouldn't be all the managers can view that person's case. It's only the ones that they're assigned.
Well, thanks. That makes sense.
Is that okay?
It does. I think that we were also having conversation with our information and governance team, and I think, but it may have been more about the Power BI or the ER tracker, because our Power BI is the one which we actually use at the moment to get reports from. And I'm getting a sense that you are getting your reports essentially from ER tracker directly. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've just amended our reports, so we do feed a lot from information from the tracker.
No, that's great. That's
ER case.
As we call it. Well, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
A question from Amanda.
Hi, we support 2 separate NHS organisations and provide an employee relations service to both. And I just wondered how, if this system could be used across 2 organisations with obviously separate reporting and stuff and separate ESR accounts, or whether if we were to implement something like this, we'd have to look at having 2 separate systems for each organisation.
Julie?
Yeah, I think probably if you want to keep everything, particularly the reporting and everything completely separate, then you may want to go down the route of having 2 separate systems. It would be possible to put it all in one, but then you'd have to set things up really carefully with sort of access role permissions and things like that. And then reporting for a super user may sort of expose both of the organisations, but it's something we could explore and make sure that we get the right settings for you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. We're just at 5:02, so I wanted to provide 5 minutes for us to wrap up. If there's any questions that you've got outstanding around next steps, obviously pick up on some of the points that you might want some extra assistance for us in looking at different ways of reporting, or looking at some of your setup. Harriet's put a note into chat for you to drop a note to us, and we'll pick those up. We'll also provide the recording, so you've got that as well. Harriet, back to you. Anything else before we finally wrap up?
Hi, no, just I have put a few notes here. If you want to continue the conversation or interested in receiving a copy of the recording or book a demonstration, or even just ask questions to account manager, there's a link here which I've also put in the chat. But yeah, if you are a customer of HR Case, wants to know who your account manager is for some product related questions, then feel free to email me directly and I can filter those through. But thank you everyone for your time today.
Thanks everyone. It's been a pleasure, and hope that was useful.
Thank you very much as well from HPMA. All right, have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.